is that we're living in a world where there are billions and billions of people on the planet, and businesses' messages just all sound very much the same. We're all talking in what is, I don't know how some of these words will translate, but if you think about traditional business talk in most businesses, it's boring, it uses jargon, it's inward thinking, it's just words, it's mundane, boring, it's robotic, it's all about selling to customers, it's rather dull, it's rather comfortable, smooth, and it's not really challenging people's thinking. If you look on the other side of what storytelling is about, it's about captivating an audience. It's about being conversational. It's about being outward facing with your message. It's about delivering great narrative. It's about being anecdotal, even heroic, trying to get customers to buy into what you're doing. And it's also about challenging people's status quo. We all sit in our little bubble. Increasingly with social media, we just get fed the things that we say we like. And actually that's not necessarily good for our brains. We actually should be looking to be challenged sometimes and not always just be fed the things that social media tells us is what we want to hear. So I think many of you will probably, in whatever society around the world you're from, recognize that first story, Little Red Riding Hood. And we tell our children that story to basically stop them walking off with strangers. We use the story to tell them an underlying message about something that is much more meaningful. In the same way, the second image here is about ghost stories. And ghost stories are, again, unilateral stories that we all tell each other in whatever society, whatever place around the world we live in, we all have ghost stories. And if you look at the final image there, these are the paintings on the walls that exist in various caves, and it shows just how long as a society we have been telling stories and why stories matter. You may well know Aristotle. He's the famous philosopher, but he talks about three really important things when you are telling stories. He talks about logos, or logic, and this is the thing that most businesses spend all of their time talking to us about. They talk to us about the 1,000 customers they have, their leadership areas in this, that, and the other. They talk about all the facts and figures for why they are relevant or important. But the reality is, most people don't buy into facts and figures. You don't go out with your other half because they sold you on the fact that they had a nice car and a big house and, you know, lots of money. Although maybe you did, I don't know. What you normally buy into from people is emotion or pathos. We actually buy from people that we trust. And ethos, which is about ethics. The fact that we want to buy from people that have high moral standards and do the right thing by their employees and the people that they work for. And this, again, is at the heart of what storytelling is about. It's not about just sharing the facts and figures about your business or your hotel chain or your airline or your brand. It's about getting people to buy in at an emotional level with what you do and why you do it. So if you want to tell good stories, the first thing you need to really understand is who's the audience. And in this case, I'm in Argentina for the very first time. And I didn't know that much about Argentina. But last night over dinner, we got talking and sharing some stories. And I learned that around 40% of Argentina is Italian in heritage. About 40% is Spanish in heritage. And the rest is pretty much made up of the rest of the world. Sounds like a pretty great mix to me. But that means that I can probably derive that you probably have a love of ice cream. You probably have a love of fine food and wine. And those maybe are things that are universal in many countries, but actually they are things that I could probably use to talk to you about as I go through my story that I'm going to talk to you about now. The next thing to say when you're telling a story is that many people that are in sales or people that stand on stage and do great presentations think that they are the hero. They are not the hero. You guys in the audience are the heroes. I'm actually the little green Yoda from Star Wars. I'm hoping everybody knows Star Wars. It's one of those really well-known stories around the world. But the idea of the presenter is to be the mentor. It is to share some insight or some knowledge with the audience so that they can actually take that knowledge away and use it in their own day-to-day environments and their own lives. And that's part of why I'm sharing with you today the secret sauce of what we're doing at Travelport with storytelling. We believe that this is a compelling, better way of talking about what your business is doing and why. Because most good mentors, whether it's the Karate Kid, I don't know whether you remember that film. Some of you in the audience look too young, but some of you probably do. You remember the wax on, wax off from the Karate Kid? Or whether it's the lightsaber that gets given to Luke Skywalker in the Star Wars films, you're giving people a gift. And it's about not wanting to sell them something, it's about giving them the knowledge about what your solution or product is that allows them to take that knowledge away and share it with other people and tell your story to those people. So this is my secret sauce. There's a book that I read in January when I took this new role on, and it was called, it's a book by Nancy Durr, and it's called Resonance. And I learnt a number of these sort of bits of information through that book. But she talks about stories and how you structure a good story. And a good story, as we all know, has a beginning, and it has a hook that gets people interested and captivated in what you're telling them. It clearly has a middle, where usually there is some crisis or major event that takes place that gets us excited and wants us to continue to watch or engage with that story. There is normally some high point or climax, and usually we get to some form of resolution at the end where everything settles down into a normal way of working. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually take you through the story that we're telling at Travelport in the travel industry today, and I'm actually going to point out to you what is the hook, where is the middle of this story, what is the climax, and what is the resolution of the story, so that you can actually see some of how this technique might be applied in your own business. And at the same time, I'm going to talk to you about what we think is happening in the travel industry that is profound and is a great opportunity for all the businesses that work within that industry. So if you could switch to the other presentation for me, that would be really useful. So I think I spoke at the beginning that I started this new role in January. I've been at Travelport for 8 years. And in that time, I've worked in product management at Travelport for the first 4 or 5 years. I did a couple of years working in marketing. And in January, I took this role as chief storyteller. Prior to working at Travelport, I worked at a company many of you may have heard of, known as Microsoft. And Microsoft have a chief storyteller as well. The guy is called Steve Clayton. He's based in Seattle. You can actually find him online, and he talks about storytelling as well. When I first got this job, I didn't really know what the hell I was supposed to be doing. So I picked up the phone and spoke to this guy, and he said, Jason, it's really easy. He said it's really about not talking in the usual business speak that people talk about. He said it's about making the company story real, making it passionate, making people believe it. And so I thought, well, coming to Latam, where more is storytelling going to be relevant than where so much passion comes in the world, right? So this is a great opportunity to talk to you about this. So the first thing I did was I interviewed a number of our senior stakeholders in the company, including our CEO, Gordon Wilson. And Gordon Wilson gave me this statement, and I wrote it into my pad at the time. And he said that we're living in a world where brands and loyalty are defined by the experiences they deliver, where every customer has a smartphone in their pocket. Now that's a pretty simple statement on the surface of it, but actually if you think about that just a little bit, it's really quite amazing how much in the last 10 years smartphones have changed the world. Not just for the travel industry, but the world in general. How many of you have sat recently in a restaurant with your significant other, looked around the restaurant and seen everybody buried in their smartphone? How many of you sit and watch television with your families and notice that half of them are glued into either the tablet or the smartphone at the same time as watching television? There's a reason television advertising companies are struggling to get noticed, because we're not paying them attention anymore. On average, in the USA, and unfortunately I don't have the figures for this market, 2 hours and 53 minutes per day is spent on our smartphones. We touch them on average 150 times per day. So these devices are becoming indispensable. And in actual fact, there's some research that shows that we are becoming hooked to the endorphin rush we get through making our little red dots disappear. And actually, there's a lot of research that's showing that this is becoming a sort of a habit for many of us. The other thing that smartphones that are connected 24/7 have done for us, it has made consumers super powerful. As individuals, we are able to literally live broadcast things around the world. And if you're a travel brand owner, that should scare you. It should scare you a lot. I'm not going to mention the particular airline, but we've all heard the story about the customer being dragged off the plane. How many people here have actually seen that video on YouTube? About a third of you. It's a pretty horrible video, and the bloody nose was a bit more dramatic than I was expecting to see. The point being, though, is that that video is going to be up on YouTube for pretty much until the internet comes tumbling down, and that's probably going to be a good few years away yet, we hope. What that means is that your travel brands have massive potential to be damaged by any individual customer in a way that historically you could never suffer. In the past, you would have a PR agency and you'd manage that through and it would all be smoothed out in a few weeks and everybody would have forgot it. But today, because of our 24/7 smartphone connected, social media connected worlds, the consumer is in the driving seat. So technology is this huge enabling, powering force which can be used for good, or, let's be honest, can be used for evil. I'm not going to mention a famous American right now, which we could have a good giggle about for some of us in the room, but there is a lot of what I would describe as misinformation in the market right now with the birth of alternative facts. We're seeing increasingly technology being used in a pervasive way to not necessarily do good things in the world as well. the birth of the Arab Spring and all of the upset that that has caused has been built off the back of social media and networking as well. So this technology force can be used for good or evil. And I think if we think that mobile has delivered a big change to the travel industry, we haven't seen anything yet. Because in the next few years, we're going to see artificial intelligence, voice assistants, robotics coming along and just making what's happened with mobile look like a flash in the pan in comparison. So these are great opportunities for businesses to grab them and understand how they're going to use this technology for good and to drive their own competitive advantage. So let me talk to you about how I think the industry is situated, and I'm going to talk a little bit about travel providers, meaning airlines, hotel companies, car rental companies, bus companies, you name it. I'm going to talk about online and offline travel agents as well. Now, you probably know all this stuff, so just bear with me, but I think it's important to spell it out. You know, if you're a traditional airline, you're facing new competitors. In this market, I know low-cost carriers coming in increasingly. In Europe, low-cost carriers actually become pretty mature now. And you look at EasyJet, they're actually targeting business travelers because that's one of the ways that they can continue to grow. But I think that if you're a low-cost carrier, you're competing with high-speed rail providers. If you're a big hotel chain, you're competing with boutique hotels. If you're a boutique hotel, you're competing with Airbnb. If you're a car rental company, you're competing with Uber. In short, the world is getting more competitive. We're seeing a changing distribution landscape as well, with the likes of metadata companies, the likes of Google offering more options, and we're seeing a lot of different price points coming into the travel provider space as well. There's a general commoditization, meaning costs are being driven down, and legacy payment systems, pretty disconnected payment systems that are often manually being managed. There's also a lack of brand loyalty. Millennials in particular aren't wedded to the brands that many of us have grown up with. They are much more fickle and are switching brands much more randomly. And finally, in the airspace in particular, as all of the traditional airlines rush to unbundle their bag, their seat, and all of that, we're facing a massive increase in complexity as well with travel providers. So in short, if you're a travel provider today, the world is looking a lot more competitive, a lot more complex. If you're an offline travel agent, you're also facing new competition. Online booking tools, or OBTs, for me, sit in one of two versions. There's the online booking tool that sits behind the firewall, and you can think of those like corporate booking tools, or there's the online booking tool that sits outside the firewall, and they're the .com sites, they're the Expedias, the Bookings.coms, the Despegars, the various providers. And of course, increasingly, Supplier.com is also competing with offline agencies. Again, apologies for the European reference here, but in the UK, British Airways is now the 7th largest leisure travel agent in terms of volume, selling hotels to their holidays to their customers. Also in the offline space, there are an increasing number of new intermediaries. They're facing massively low margins because they have a high cost base with call centers basically driving the entire experience. Rising complexity because of all of this unbundling that's going on. Manual payment systems. Over the years, I've spent a lot of time in travel agents' offices around the world, and as much as this would never happen, I've seen a few credit cards being handed around on bits of paper. It's not exactly seamless, and it definitely isn't fraud-free. There's low brand loyalty in this space, Inconsistent traveler experiences, and this is a real killer for this market. As all of these products become unbundled and become more complicated, it's becoming increasingly hard for these prices to be compared accurately. If you're a gold card holder, you may well get the free bag and the free seat upgrade. But if you're not, you may have to pay for those. And of course, if you're getting your price point from a system that isn't connected or aware of your status, that can lead to a disconnect in terms of the two prices. And if somebody gives you a price on the phone that's different from the one you're expecting, that tends to lead to a breakdown in trust. And then customers start questioning. If you're an online travel agent, these for many years in the travel industry have been the disruptors of the market. But these disruptors are being disrupted themselves increasingly by new providers. Metadata companies in particular have been very disruptive in the last few years. Of course, Expedia and Booking.com and Ctrip have gone and bought their respective metadata companies. In this area as well, we have low margins, rising complexity, because if I'm an online travel agent, do I want to put the bag and the seat upgrade into my booking flow, or do I want to push the customer off to supplier.com to do that? That's a deliberate choice I have to make a decision around, and the risk, of course, is if I push the customer off to supplier.com, do I risk them booking with supplier.com next time and not coming back to me? Obviously, brand loyalty is a challenge for online travel agents as well. One of the things that most online travel agents have not found the secret sauce around yet is actually getting repeat customers coming back to them. Most of them spend a small fortune on Google AdWords, Facebook, and other digital advertising to keep customers coming back to them. And the challenge, of course, for that is because of Google's pricing model, the prices just continue to go up and up because of the bidding-based model that represents. So in short, this travel industry that we're all a part of is fundamentally changed from where it was a few short decades ago. In the 1980s, when I was in my teenage years, early teenage years I might add, we actually used to go into shops, get our brochure, look at the various options, circle them, go back to the shop, make our booking. In the 1990s, we saw the birth of the travel management company focusing particularly on corporations and offering call center type experiences for travel booking. In the noughties, we saw the birth of the .com travel agents. If you look at the original Expedia website, for example, and compare it to what it looks like today, it is night and day different from what it was. And of course, most recently in the current decade, we've seen the birth of the mobile phone-based travel experience. And again, it's really surprising to me that the first iPhone only came out 10 years ago. And yet now, if I ask the question, who doesn't have a smartphone in the audience, nobody's hand would go up, I'm guessing. Anybody want to confess? So, the short is that we're seeing winners and losers through these changes. And you can be a traditional travel agency and choose not to embrace some of these new technologies, or you can actually look at these as a way of engaging with customers in new and exciting ways. Mobile has this great ability to be with the traveler 24/7. But what I would say is, it isn't just mobile first. What matters is delivering a great experience first. Mobile is merely the latest disruptive channel to shake things up. And I think in the travel industry, we understand what good customer experience is all about. If you've worked in hospitality, you know that it's all about delivering a great experience to the customer on the property. You know that if you've worked in airlines, it's about delighting the customer when they're on the flight. And so we know at our hearts that customer experience is about delivering these great kinds of experience that people will remember and come back to time and time again. So in terms of where we are in that storytelling piece, my first slide that I talked to you about, the CEO slide, that was the hook that got you hooked into this. Right now, we're on a bit of a sort of slippery slope of doom and gloom in terms of the things I'm talking about, right? So it isn't an exactly exciting, happy story right now, but I'm taking you down on a journey before I build you back up and get to the climax that's going to be a lot better. So, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, travelers, that's you guys, that's us, we want relevant, personalized choices and connected, frictionless experiences. Now, I don't know how that's going to translate, but think of a connected, frictionless experience a little bit like getting in an Uber. Now, my experiences of Uber in Argentina have not been that great. I've had to wait a bit longer than I would in London. But they are generally pretty slick. I think if you've ever been in one and left anything in the car, you can at least get hold of the driver. At least you know where all of your invoices and receipts are, and you don't need to get your credit card out at the end of that journey. I recently in London got into a black cab, which I hadn't done for quite a few years, and I just got out of at the end of the journey, walked off, and suddenly the black cab is pulling up at the side of me using a few expletives that I won't use here today because I hadn't actually paid for the vehicle. So in my mind, I've actually got to a point where I've kind of forgotten about payments. For me, the ultimate payment is the invisible payment. And I think many of us will get more and more used to that as we see these technologies coming along. So a connected, frictionless experience feels a lot like an Uber experience, at least for me in London. But it just so happens that Travelport is a business that is working on these kinds of experiences as well. We create the EasyJet app for EasyJet, and that app transacts 24% of all EasyJet's bookings today. Nearly a quarter of all of their bookings get booked through that application. And it's an app that has a 4.5 star rating on the various app stores, etc. So increasingly, we believe that technology and the evolving traveler needs and expectations will impact all the interactions between you and your customers. And for me, this diagram is actually a really interesting diagram, not only because it explains the journey that Travelport is on as a business, but I think it also explains the journey that many of us need to take our businesses on to engage with customers in the right way. And let me explain that. The traditional GDS businesses worked in search, shop, and book. That's all they did. They helped you search for what you looked for, shop, and book that. And that was it. We were done at that point. But actually, Travelport decided a few years ago when we embarked on our new strategy to become a travel commerce platform that actually we could help with payments. And so we bought a business called eNet, which allows you to transact in a fraudulent, in a fraud-free way to be able to actually get the payment covered with a virtual credit card number and make an incentive payment on that. But also, with the mobile applications that Travelport have been building through the acquisition of a mobile business that we bought based in Dublin with over 300 iPhone and Android developers, we're able to support pre-trip, traveling, post-trip, and evaluation stages of that journey with customers. And I think the opportunity for all of us to engage with the traveler through the journey, through what mobile gives us, is very real. This little stat I thought was very interesting. It says the intersection between high-tech and high-touch is now a key battleground for travel brands the world over. Those with the customer care infrastructure to deliver could stand to gain if they can get their digital houses in order. And what that says to me, paraphrased, is that you may be a very traditional business, but if you can get your digital assets lined up behind the way you work, you can be successful in this very changed digital world that we're all engaging with. Because in our view, increasingly, your travel brand is being disrupted by new players, new technology, and generally just better experiences. A lot of the traditional travel agents that we talk to talk about the fact that customers don't talk about their brand so much anymore. They talk about the corporate booking tool that is increasingly being used to book their travel. And so you need a way of being able to get your voice heard by your customers. The other thing that I would just highlight here as well is that increasingly the world is connecting through more and more APIs. And we're seeing what's called the birth of the API economy. If you think about the way Google Maps works and the way all of these different APIs that exist in the world today, you're able to, for instance, take traffic data from Google Maps and combine it with data from other things to potentially alert customers for when they might need to leave their home to get to the airport in time to get their flight. That kind of data in the past was very difficult to get hold of. But because increasingly businesses expose their information through APIs, it's very easy now for you to take data from different areas and bring that together to deliver better value to customers in new ways. I think the other thing that I would highlight as well, for those of you that know of Travelport and our competitors, we are not hosting airlines and we're not focused on old school distribution anymore. We're really focused on this new mission. Our competitors host airlines, and this is an area that we are not involved in. I think it's very important to understand that. We're making investments in a new set of areas which we believe are the right areas for success in this changing world. Because at Travelport, we're focused on becoming a business-to-business for consumer platform where trips and travelers are the currency, not the traditional bookings and PNRs that you see in some of the old systems. We believe that the old world is the global distribution system. We believe the new world is travel commerce and retailing. We believe the old world is segments and bookings. We believe the new world is all about trips and actually helping businesses maximize the amount of money they can make on every trip that gets booked through the system. We believe the old world is very much about business to business, whereas modern businesses need to be about business to business for consumer. And I note for consumer there, not to consumer. We're not selling to consumers, that's not the business we're in. But we need to be aware of what consumers want because of all the stuff I spoke to at the beginning about the consumer being so much more powerful in the world today. We also believe the world is changing. It's not going to be connected through Edifact and switches anymore. It's going to be increasingly connected through APIs. We believe it's not about the passenger name record and data. It's about the actual traveler and the insight and foresight that you can use, that data can give you. And finally, like all platform businesses, we believe it's about making it easy to get the content in, easy to get the content out, and to make it consumer ready. From my storytelling agenda at the beginning, this slide is the climax of the story that I'm talking about. You might notice that we've talked about a set of things that were not very good, about challenges in the industry. Now we're starting to answer what we believe is the answer to those challenges. This part of my story is the climax. I've only got a few slides left. and we're heading to the resolution, which is that final part of the story narrative. So at Travelport, we're focused on 4 key investment areas in the business today. The first of those is around connecting travel content. And as a business today, we make more travel content available through our rich content and branding, more bags and seats than any other travel provider in the marketplace. We also have more API-connected hotel content than any of the traditional distribution players today. So it's all about giving that choice. We have a great case study of how we've worked with United to get their bags and seats into our booking platform to help people have access to all the great content that's available through our rich content and branding tool. There's also a great example of an online travel agent that decided to use the content that we make available to offer bags, seats, and upgrades to customers in their online booking flow. And interestingly, they have driven an upsell of 30% by doing so. So it's a really interesting story of how the challenge for many online travel agents, especially regional ones, is do I put the bag, the seat, and the upgrade into my booking flow, or do I leave that for my customer to go and do on the .com site with the supplier? And this particular case study would suggest that you should, because there is money you're leaving on the table for doing that. The next area we're investing in is around travel performance. This is about making it really fast to find the content that you need. And we have been making a lot of investments in making the search that Travelport is well known for faster than ever. In the last 2 years, we've shaved 2 seconds off the search performance, and at a time when we have more shops coming into our system than at any time in the past. We're also focused here on actually helping to drive performance for the business, and if you think about that, there are 2 ways you do that. One is to reduce your costs, or to increase your revenues. This is where products like eNet that I spoke to you about before can help, because eNet reduces fraud, which is a cost to your business, at the same time as offering an incentive payment, which is literally helping to drive top-line performance for your business. The third area we're focused on is around empowering travel experience. And this is about all of that great app capability that we can do. All of the apps in the background there are apps that Travelport has built. So Latam's app, for example, Air Mexico's app in this region have been built by Travelport's mobile business. In addition to that, we're working with companies like BCD and Amex Business Travel to create apps for them so they can have that great experience with their customer. And also Travelport has been investing in the experience for travel agents as well through our Travelport products like SmartPoint, which is a smart agent desktop that takes the cryptic screens that you will know as at GDS and combine them with the graphical screens that you would expect to somebody who's used to more of a more modern type of experience. Finally, we're investing in delivering travel intelligence. Over 8 billion travel transactions go through Travelport's platform every single day. That powers a huge amount of data that we can actually expose to you to help you have better insights about the kind of things that you should be offering to your customers, the kind of solutions that you may want to make available to them. And so we're working on a range of solutions here to really give you more foresight. As many of you know, through using big data models, you can use predictive analytics to actually almost see into the future, and this is a very exciting area for where we're going. This is my resolution, my final part of the story. At Travelport, we are a changed business. We are truly becoming a tech business first and a travel business second. We're focused on becoming a travel commerce and retailing platform, helping to maximize the return on every trip for the travel supply chain. Travelport connects travel providers to travel resellers. And if you think about it, every single trip is an opportunity to monetize a little bit more. Don't just take an air booking, combine that with a hotel booking, combine that with a rail booking, combine that with an element for payment, add a bag, add a seat. All of these are opportunities to make extra money and deliver great customer experience. Because we believe that when you have the right travel content, i.e. travel choice, combined with the right speed, i.e. travel performance, when that is bookable, i.e. you've delivered a great experience, when all of those are in conjunction with the right information backing it up, that is the point where you convert more business for your business. So, my final slide. Thank you very much for coming and listening to me today. I shared with you a little bit about the journey Travelport's on as a tech business around storytelling. And I've shared with you as well the Travelport story, which I hope you agree is not too much of a sales pitch. We talked a lot about what we think the challenges are in the industry that we all see in that industry. And we believe that actually the future will be about delivering these great connected experiences for customers. And actually, all businesses around the world have as much ability to do that as the Silicon Valley businesses like Uber and Airbnb. All we need is the passion, the energy, the desire, and the right technology partner to work with us to build those capabilities. And we believe that Travelport is that partner in the Latam region. And I know you guys have plenty of passion and energy for this stuff, so we'd love to work with you and understand how we can build the Ubers and Airbnbs, but in this region, not in other places around the world. Thank you very much for your time today.
Hola. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to make you some questions.
Or
the people, if the people want. It's okay?
Of course,
okay? Well,
absolutely.
I have a question for you. Do you believe that storytelling is able to use in any kind of business in tourism?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we all tell stories. The Little Red Riding Hood story is, it has a story, but the underlying message is something different, right? We tell our children that story because we don't want them to go off with strangers.
Okay.
That is what the art of storytelling is about. It's about wrapping your messages in something that is much more interesting, much more meaningful.
Yeah.
And I think in the travel industry in particular, you know, we're a service industry which is all about connecting people. And ultimately, that is what storytelling it's about. It's about bringing people together, sharing great stories over a glass of wine or a fruit cocktail, whatever your preferred poison is, and doing that in a way that builds relationships with people. And that's the industry that we're in as travel companies.
How shall we start if we never have done nothing in storytelling?
So my advice, the Resonance book, you can get it on Amazon. I think it's a Kindle book as well from memory. I would start there. There are some great TED Talks as well. So if you type in storytelling on TED's network, you'll see a number of really inspiring speakers there. Both of those would be great starts.
That's a nice tip for the starters. ¿Alguien tiene una pregunta para aprovechar? Este es un gran momento para hacer preguntas con respecto a creatividad, a storytelling. ¿Nadie? Well, people will find you here.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much
Thank
for
you very
being
much.
here and for this nice speaking. It was, I hope for people too, but for me it was very inspiring.
Great.
Thank you very much. Un
Thank you very
aplauso.
much.
Muchísimas gracias. Bueno.